Prime Minister Christopher Luxon has promised his government will be out hustling in the world. To talk about that, I'm joined by Trade Minister Todd McClay. So kind of hustling, and what will that mean?
Well, it's very much what New Zealand businesses do on the world stage. You take a business who wants to establish itself in a market, they'll go out, they'll be active, they'll visit, they'll create relationships, they'll invest time and effort in that, and that's what the New Zealand government will do. If you think about the last 6 years, and COVID would be part of it, we probably ended up being far too inward looking, the government certainly. And we weren't out there servicing important relationships anywhere near as much as we should, or putting the investment into those relationships that we want to grow. So it's a very clear signal from Christopher Luxon as Prime Minister, is the government's not going to sit at home waiting for people to come and buy things from us. We're going to be out there with businesses on the world stage, finding opportunities and helping grow the New Zealand economy.
I mean, but to be fair though, that government still actually managed to negotiate and conclude a number of free trade agreements, one of which now is just going through Parliament, the one with the European Union. So
Well, yes, but we shouldn't measure the success of the trade policy based on just that which we negotiate. There's more to it than that. So one of the other metrics we've said is we want to double our exports by value over 10 years. We should measure our success by how much we sell as well as the things that we negotiate. But if you take India as an example, so you're right, there were a couple of trade deals that were done under the last government. They were established and set up and even launched previously before they came there. But, during the course of that 6 years, their engagement with India became almost, non-existent, except towards the end of the 6 years. They said it wasn't a priority, that there wasn't a deal there, that it was too hard. And, the Foreign Minister at the time said a trade agreement with India is not a priority for the New Zealand government, yet Australia negotiated a deal during that period of time, actually during COVID, when they were locked down. The UK has started and close to concluding. Canada was very close. India was doing deals with other countries and negotiating with the European Union. And we're being left behind. So what does that mean in real terms? Well, it means for the New Zealand sheep farmer, they face a 30% tariff when they send lamb to India. About half the Indian population eat meat. The other half don't. There's 700 million people, therefore, that could eat it. And the Australian sheep farmer has a zero tariff. So they get to sell as much meat as they want, 30% lower price than the New Zealand farmer, and we're missing out. And so what we're saying is actually we're going to be out on the world stage. The government should be there, ministers should be visiting, we should be looking for opportunities, we should be opening the door and helping businesses do more trade, not just negotiating deals for them.
Well, you were there late last year.
Yeah.
When will you be leading a trade delegation, a business delegation to India this year? How soon will that be?
Well, the Prime Minister has committed to going to India within his first year in office, and so we're working on that now. There will be other visits in the very near future. I'm meeting just in a week from now with the Indian Trade Minister again, and we'll have conversations.
India?
In the WTO Ministerial Conference in Dubai in the UAE. We've agreed to meet there rather than me travelling to India. You'll see a lot of travel from me and other ministers there. So we're putting in place now exactly what our strategy should be to invest in the relationship with India. And all I can tell you is there will be a number of trade missions, and what we're doing is talking to India and the business community here about what that should look like. So as an example, it's a very big place. Should it be state by state in India as opposed to everywhere? Should we, get 30 business people from important companies together and go out there and have lots of meetings, which is important? Or should actually what we do is also have a sectorial approach and say, well, here's a sector that actually has particular interest in India, the wood and log trade as an example. We've been able to get barriers out of the way so New Zealand wood exports can go back into India again. They weren't able to for 2 years. In fact, that was announced when I was there that they had changed the rule to allow it to come back in. Should we take the New Zealand wood sector over there to create partnerships and measure the success on those trade missions, not by the number of meetings or lunches or leads that are generated, but by actually the deals that are done and the extra trade that is created.
So even without a free trade deal, do you believe there's still plenty of scope to expand trade even before you get a free trade deal?
And the answer is yes to that. And when I met with my counterpart, Minister Goyal, at the end of last year, we agreed to look for ways for there more trade to take place. So one of those actually is around these non-tariff barriers, and the wood products going into India is an example of that. We changed some rules here about how they are treated and fumigated, didn't meet the requirements of India, and so for 2 years there were no logs sent to India. We've worked through that. So one of the things we've agreed is our officials are going to meet quite soon. I think it's in New Zealand, and they're going to look at these non-tariff barriers and how we can fix some of them more quickly. And also how we can identify them before they come up so we can fix them before they're a problem for the business community, number one. Number two, I've invited him to come to New Zealand and to bring a trade mission down, and he's indicated he would like to do that. They've got their election to get out of the way, so it might be the later part of the year, and that once their election is done, we will be heading in that direction. And so the answer is, there's trade that is existing at the moment outside of a formal agreement. There's much more that can be done, but ultimately for New Zealand, we're of the belief that where you have a framework, a set of rules that gives certainty to businesses and industry on both sides, and it's balanced so it's mutually beneficial, then trade will grow exponentially more quickly because of that certainty. And I've indicated to him that's like what we would like to do, but the number one priority for the new government at the moment is investing in that relationship because we think it was underdone over the last 5 or 6 years. It's not about blame, that's the past. I'm not looking backwards. I'm just saying we're going to invest a lot in it in a number of fronts, not just around business and trade, and ultimately when countries do that and they get on well, as we've seen with China, a trade deal is in the offing because it'll be the business community on both sides that will start asking their government for it.
Has India indicated that they'd be prepared to look at that again, negotiations?
So we haven't sat down and said in my very first meeting with them, we have to negotiate. I've been very clear that we want to invest in the relationship. There'll be areas that we could cooperate in defence, as an example, has happened before. I think India, there's a role that they can play in the Pacific with the Pacific Island nations, certainly with Fiji. We'll probably be able to cooperate in those sorts of things. Already on the world stage, in a number of meetings I'm involved in, I meet with my Indian counterpart or their ambassadors or high commissioners, and we talk about areas we have in common and how we might go forward with that in those meetings. And so you'll see a lot of this building across the government over a period of time. But ultimately, as we've seen that they've started to do trade deals with the world, we'll get to a point where also they should do one with New Zealand, and we're going to put every effort in to make sure that happens as quickly as possible.
When do you think that could be?
Well, nothing good happens quickly in trade, so I'm not going to put a timeline on it, but the Prime Minister was very clear before the election of expectations about us making significant progress during this term of Parliament. It's why the very first speech that I made as Trade Minister was to India New Zealand Business Function in Auckland on our relationship with India. In fact, that was the first formal speech that the new government made, and the very first visit I did as Trade Minister was to India. Flew up there for a day. We flew up there, worked all day, got on a plane, came back again. We didn't spend a night in any hotels. We slept on the airplane because it's an important relationship, and to demonstrate to them just how important that was. So close to Christmas, when Parliament was an urgency, and we've agreed to meet a number of times and have been talking fairly frequently as we find ways to build that relationship.
Todd McClay, thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
To support our award-winning independent journalism, subscribe to nbr.co.nz.